So scamming in the music streaming industry has become a big problem for artists and for listeners. Streaming fraud is when someone uses bots, stolen accounts, or manipulates a platform to alter the perception of their own commercial success or steals streaming income that actually belongs to an artist or a musical industry professional. So BeatDap is a Canadian company. They're aiming to fight that issue. They have created machine learning algorithms that look at streaming data for possible fraud. For more, we're joined by the co-CEO of BeatDap, Morgan Hayduke. Welcome to your morning.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay, so according to Billboard, and this is a big problem, according to Billboard, more than $1 billion in royalties could be lost to streaming fraud worldwide. So you use machine learning, but how does that actually work? What does that look like?
We feed the data that comes from the platforms or the distributors, the people that put music onto streaming services. We look at all of that data through the lens of what does a normal user behavior look like? What does a superfan behavior look like? And then what are anomalies that might indicate someone is using a bot or stealing a real user's account to try and make money or change the perception of their success, sort of like what you said in the run-up. And so our models are tuned to the peculiarities of music streaming, but then are, validated by us taking our human team of analysts and looking at tens of thousands of cases of individual streams and making sure that we're not getting any wrong.
So you're looking for bots?
We're looking for bots, and we're looking for accounts that have been stolen, which is actually, I think for most people thinking about this, the bigger problem. You don't want your account to be compromised and then used by someone to run up streams for music that you aren't listening to. One, because it'll ruin the algorithms for you, but two, it's going to divert revenue away from legitimate artists. And
streaming's been around for a while now. Why haven't the labels and the publishers gone after this kind of scamming before?
I think it's a function of the industry maturing. So for sort of the 10 years after Napster, and sort of the physical market, the bottom falling out of it effectively, music was just maturing and people were excited to be making money again. And what happens eventually is the pot of revenue gets big enough that fraudsters start to be interested in it, and the industry gets sophisticated and decides to start cracking down on the leaky bucket problem of revenue erosion.
So then how big a problem is it? We said potentially $1 billion worldwide, but what does that look like to a middling artist, let's say?
I mean, it's really hard to make it in the music industry. So it affects artists proportionally because revenues are divided up usually proportionally from the platforms. It's called the pro rata system, which basically just means by market share consumption. For an independent artist who is trying to make enough money just to make the next album or put food on the table or pay rent, it can be meaningful. Even if it's only hundreds of dollars, let's say, a month, it still can affect them. And obviously for the top artists and the top labels, it's a much bigger problem.
So you're kind of like forensic detectives. So what happens when you find somebody who's either committing fraud or has manipulated it somehow? What do you guys do with that information, and is there any consequences?
Yeah, so we can tell platforms, for example, this is a group of bot accounts and we should ban them from the platform. We can tell them this is an account that's been taken over, a legitimate user account, and we need to reset their password and get them, the right person back with their credentials and the wrong person off the account. One of the shocking figures that we've sort of discovered is that something like 90% of login attempts on consumer-facing websites on the internet are just people testing usernames and passwords to see if they work. So there's always account credentials floating around being used by fraudsters for all types of different purposes. Music's no different. So one of the things our customers love is that we can say, hey, that's a legitimate user, but their account's been compromised. Let's get it back in the real user's hands and get the fraudster off the platform.
And is there any consequences for the fraudsters?
Well, it sort of moves upstream from there. So if you're running a botnet, for example, and we kick you off the platform or the platform kicks you off their platform, you may either try to retool those bots to be more sophisticated, or you might go somewhere else. And ultimately, our goal is just to make music a much harder target. We're never going to get rid of fraud on the internet. That's the tale as old as time. But if music can be tougher, we think that we'll be able to bring some of that missing market share back to the rightful recipients.
How successful have you been at that?
I think really successful so far, and we've got a lot of runway ahead of us to make music just a way harder target for bad attacks and ultimately to make it a better home for artists.
It's an interesting scam setup that we are looking at in our Scammywary segment here. Thanks so much.
Love it. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.